You know that Kurt Angle is going to be figured in big here. You actually send him to do a media tour over in England, and it's written that some of the things he says pissed you off. Quote, Angle said he continues to push for simplicity with TNA's booking. Quote, I've spoken to the bookers, writers, and owners of TNA and said, listen, wrestling is very simple. Keep it simple. He said regarding the steps of the King of the Mountain match, it's like, holy shit, it's too fucking confusing. He said TNA can triple ratings by next year if they simplify their approach. Quote, we call ourselves Total Nonstop Action Wrestling. We say TNA, we are wrestling. No, we're not. We're fucking gimmick matches. And then there are the run-ins. Now, this is not Wade Keller saying this. This is not Dave Meltzer or Brian Alvarez saying this. This is a contracted wrestler, one of your highest paid performers, being critical of the owners and management and bookers and writers and just the whole team. And sometimes when we see stuff like this, it's because it's a storyline. And sometimes it's just a guy saying what he really feels. When you read about this or heard about this 15 years ago, what'd you think?
To say that the creative room was upset would be an understatement. Conrad, when that was discussed in the room, I was just like, he said, what? And there was tension in the room. And I immediately went to, now hold on, I'm the leader here. How do we kind of navigate our way through this? And I immediately went to, okay, who was babysitting him? There are, well, when I'm talking to my PR folks, and especially this goes back, there's a guy in WCW and others, and I'm like, hey, you don't have to worry about me. I understand leading the witness. And you know what I mean by that? I mean, there are reporters out there that, I mean, they literally set Kurt up and he just fed. But had I not heard these exact questions, comments, thoughts from people in the office, and knowing without question that Dixie had said not all of those, but some of those. And I'll never forget, downstairs, Dutch said, hey, man, can we go outside? And I'm like, okay. We went outside and he said, you know what this is all about, don't you? And I go, yeah, but Kurt needs to be a little bit more diplomatic, because that was kind of the general consensus of the room. He ain't told anybody in this room. And Vince was, well, he's kind of complained. I'm trying to recall this as I sit here today. So there was a little bit of he said, she said, but for the most part, Kurt had never mentioned any of that to us in the room. But Dutch just said, hey, man, I don't think that's Kurt. I think that's Dixie feeding Kurt. And I think he felt comfortable enough for the green light to just fire off on it.
Wow, I didn't see that coming. When you said, you know what this is, I had no idea that's where you would land.
Yeah. And when look, again, hindsight's 2020, but me being the delusional optimist, putting my head in the sand, worrying about everything but nonsense. When I look back and kind of saw how the chips went down in 2009 into 2010, I go, okay, that might not have been Kurt so much, because boy, oh boy, did he let the floodgates go. I mean, it was just carving. Yeah, he carved his own product up, which I didn't think was good for him or me or the company.
Why would Dixie want that? She would wanted you out and thought there could be enough criticism that people would push for that.
Bingo. When I look back on the whole timeline of things,
how stupid is that? Respectfully,
ego makes folks do some crazy things. I'm guilty of it on a number of occasions in my 37 years, but man, oh man, when you really drill it down,
I want to simple.
He had the motivation to do it, because Kurt, knowing who that creative room is, But I can't imagine him being in the middle of this position because look, Dixie's my boss. She's the one really paying the, writing the bill, writing the paycheck. But then over here, I've got Vince and Dutch and Jeff and the creative team and the Main Event Mafia guys and all this. And ooh.
Well,
it was really stiff.
I'll tell you what, you just changed a lot of people's opinion about that, because I think a lot of people had a different perception in mind when this came out, and especially with the benefit of hindsight. But I always come back to
why.
Well, I just want to remind everybody, we're not just talking about wrestling, folks. This is the wrestling business.
Yeah.
And there's never going to be a scenario that I know of in any other business where someone who is financially incented to grow this thing, like as revenues grow for Impact and TNA, they do for Dixie Carter personally as well. Why would you go out there and have one of your top stars shit on the very vehicle that determines whether or not you're profitable or not and how much profit there is to chop up? It's almost as if we'd rather have 100% of a tiny pie as opposed to a decent sized chunk of a much larger pie. I just don't understand that. Like, it doesn't make any rational business sense whatsoever.
It happened by 2014. That's exactly what she got. And all the water under the bridge. And I've admitted all my screw ups and mistakes, but when Dutch said that in my backyard, I immediately go, because I was really, really mad at, in my mind, Kurt's over there, maybe up at 5 a.m., blowing and going. And he has this reporter sit down and kind of go into, man, that King of the Mountain match, that isn't that ridiculous? And Kurt maybe say, well, it kind of, it does have a lot of rules. Yeah, let's move on to the next thing. Yeah, don't y'all have too many gimmick matches? Well, Kurt, y'all had 6 out of 9 or whatever, some kind of number. Well, that is a lot of, kind of being led by the witness. That's where my head was at, completely giving Kurt a hall pass. That damn reporter just chewed him up. But once I kind of went down and thought about, Dixie did say this at one time, and she did say that and didn't say that. And then I go in and have sidebars with everybody in the room and say, hey, have you ever heard this kind of stuff? They all go, yep. I go, well, boys, there you have it.
Let me just add some context too. I think it's important to, not everybody listening to this knows this, but in real life, when you just become friendly with other people inside the business and they let their guard down and they just start talking, it is everyone's first instinct. I don't know why this exists, and I think it only exists in wrestling. Everybody shits on everything. I don't know why that is, but everybody starts saying, can you believe? And so that doesn't exist in a professional setting. But when you get to that casual friendship version of things, that's how people communicate in this industry. They sort of poke holes and poke fun. Some of it's real, some of it's not, and we're all just trying to have a good laugh. But still, we understand when the camera's on and we're doing media, now it's time to sell our product. We can be critical behind closed doors and make fun on telephone, telegram, telewrestler. If the text messages between wrestlers or people in this industry were ever made public, people would have a totally different perception of the industry. But when they're on, when the red light's on, you just don't do this unless someone puts you up to it. That makes total sense.
And here's another thing. When I was just checking the way you said that, here's, and this is only for me, kind of come certainly, over the last 5.5, 6 years, but through the years, if me, think of some, okay, Bruce, let's just use Bruce. If me and Bruce are having a conversation about the wrestling industry for 15 or 20 minutes, and you have somebody on the other side, let's just say a plexiglass wall, and they're listening to it, their interpretation could be, damn, they're critical of this and critical of that. But what me and Bruce are really talking about is putting a guy over. I think there's levels of interpretation of the industry that you have to have, and I'm not, this probably isn't coming out right, but they're with time. And look, the older you get in this business, yeah, you can be jaded this and jaded that, but there comes a level of discussion of just maturity, maybe not the right word, but the longer you're around it, their interpretation, because I think guys that had been in the business not very long get in, and I'll say this, I think their conversation starters are, did you see this? Did you see that? And it starts off on negativity or anyway, maybe I'm saying it's the cadence of that conversation where I think if you've been around a little bit longer, you may start off on this, but you're like, it don't really even matter. What really matters is what you just said. That's what I'm trying to say. What really matters is what you do in business. How are you going to go create that ROI? Let's talk about what really matters. And that's creative and talent and marketing and timing and all the things that really matter about it, not none of the noise and chatter. I think a lot of the noise and chatter takes up so much bandwidth nowadays. God, that may sound like an old timer, but there's so much chatter that really, that stuff you're talking about, Conrad, like, well, did you? We both know it really don't matter.
Here's another report from Wade. Dixie was backstage at the tapings on Wednesday night. She rarely attends the second night of tapings in Orlando, so the assumption is that she's there to finalize the Nash contract negotiations. At one point in the day, she was spotted having what was described as a very animated conversation with Jeff Jarrett outside the studio. They spoke for roughly an hour outside, away from other personnel, and then headed inside where they continued their conversation for another hour. I know there's probably almost no chance you remember this conversation, but was this about the Kurt Angle promo or something else?
It had to be. I mean, like, I don't remember an hour conversation. I mean, probably at every TV, we would at least talk outside for, let's say, a half hour. I mean, you know, I mean, you talking about a laundry list of things to get done. I look kind of back on the TNA head count on office workers, tiny, tiny, comparatively speaking to what we were doing. But yes, so I don't remember it specifically. My gut tells me, yes, we had a conversation about the Kurt deal.
At some point, you guys at least decide, hey, we're going to make this into a storyline. We're going to lean into
that was in the room either that day when it came out or however it may be. I said, look, why are we, in a way, we can make this kind of feed into the Main Event Mafia storyline. Let's not just turn our head from it. I think that's, you know, you don't have to use it all, but you can use a shred of it.